I passed the UK theory and practical test on my first attempt. As a foreigner living in the UK on a visa, I spent a total of £1,471.99 to obtain my full UK driving license. And it took me almost 2 years to get it. If you're anything like me, juggling work, life, and parenting, the thought of learning to drive here in the UK and getting your full UK driving license might feel intimidating. But here I am, I did it, right? And in this video, I'll walk you through exactly how I made it happen to inspire and educate those looking to take the UK theory or practical driving test soon. To ensure this video flows seamlessly, I'll first share tips that helped me pass my theory test. After that, I will share the strategies that helped me prepare for my practical driving test, and then I will share invaluable points that helped me on my practical driving test day. Can you let me know in the comment section what stage you are at in getting your full UK driving license, and I'll be sure to cheer you on. Now let me get started with the tips that helped me to pass my theory test before I move on to the practical test. Tip 1 was that I treated the theory test like an academic exam. As a qualified UK mortgage and protection advisor, I am used to studying and preparing for structured exams, so I applied the same mindset. Yeah, I studied hard using the official DVSA app, which cost me about £4.99. It was one of the best investments I made while I was trying to get my full UK driving license. I did all the practice questions on the app repeatedly, which helped me build speed and confidence. Tip number 2 was that I made studying for my test a daily habit. So every night before bed, right, I would spend like a few minutes studying for my test. I did not cram. I let my brain absorb the information, especially the highway codes and those road signs, because they were confusing to me at a point in time. So studying daily repeatedly just helped me understand everything. My third tip was that I did a full crash study session the weekend before my test. Just me, my phone, and the DVSA app. I repeatedly focused on mock tests, because on the app there are mock tests, and then the hazard perception clips. You can find all of these on the app if you choose to get the app. You know, that intensive focus just helped me remember the tricky road signs that I used to mix up. Likewise, doing the crash study before my test, right, was not just about cramming everything, because there's no way you can cram everything that is on that app. It was just about reinforcing the key patterns and the question styles, right, so that I can understand the questions during my exams. If I'm being honest, right, that last minute study gave me the edge I need to confidently pass my exams. Tip number 4 was that I watched a lot of YouTube videos to understand the why. You see, instead of memorizing the answers, right, when I was doing my mock exams, because it's not the same thing that will come out on the exam, I just went on YouTube and I looked for video explanations behind road signs here in the UK and the rules, because I'm more of a visual learner. You know, that helps me understand it, especially those tricky hazard perception videos. You know, you're not sure which is hazard, which one is not hazard, but those YouTube videos helped me. If you're looking for videos to watch when you're practicing or preparing for your theory or your practical driving test in the UK, I would say go on YouTube and look for video tutorials that talks about the UK driving test, because there are a lot of videos, free videos here on YouTube that you can use to study and it will help you pass your UK driving test, like both the theory and the practical. There are lots of YouTube videos. Some content creators that's their niche. They help people pass both the theory and the practical driving test here in the UK, and they create free videos about that. Tip number 5 was that I prepared the night before the exam, stayed calm, and then I arrived early to my test center. This might seem like an obvious tip, but trust me, it's something you should take important if you're going to write your exams. My exam was on a Monday morning, so the night before my exam, right, I slept early so that I would wake up early for my exams, which I did. So I woke up early, showered, ate, and then I relaxed my nerves. I did not do any studying that morning, because I know if I study, right, I'll be anxious about the whole thing. I might fail a question and then it can just throw me off balance, because I'll be thinking, oh, why did I fail this question? Didn't I read this aspect well? So I did not do any studying that morning. I just got to the test center about 10 to 15 minutes early, sat my exam confidently, and I passed. Now, in this video, I'm not talking about details of how to get your UK driving license or details details about how the exam is structured, because I do have a video here on YouTube where I talked about all of those, so you can go watch that video if you want to know how to get your full UK driving license, like the whole process, the cost, the rules, how to apply for these exams, like the driving test exams. Everything you need to know is in that video, and I'll link it to this video for those who are interested in watching that. Now let's move on to the second part of this video, which covers the tips that helped me prepare for and pass my practical driving test. My tip number one was that I tried to understand what the practical test involves so that I can prepare accordingly. For the UK practical test, right, you can get up to 15 faults and still pass, as long as you don't have any serious or dangerous faults, and as long as you don't have the same minor fault 3 times. Likewise, the UK practical driving test typically involves an eyesight check and show me tell me vehicle safety questions. Now, example of a tell me vehicle safety question would be, tell me how you would check that your brake is working before a journey, right? What you need to do during your test is to just tell the examiner. You don't need to show the examiner, and they'll mostly ask you this tell me question before you start your driving test. Now, for the show me question, you would actually have to show your examiner how you will do a particular thing in your vehicle during your driving test while you are on the move, like while you're driving. Now, the show me question can be like, show me how you will clean your windscreen using the wiper and the washer, or show me how you would demystify your windscreen, something like that. But you would have to show the examiner. Likewise, ensure to practice your show me tell me questions. If you go on gov.uk, you will see the show me tell me questions and you can practice them, and there are some YouTube videos that do a good job of answering all the show me and tell me questions in a more concise way, and I use those YouTube videos to be fair, and that's what helped me with my show me tell me questions. There are a lot of them, and you don't know the particular question they would ask you, so I would highly suggest like you go and learn the questions and learn the answers to the questions, not just so that you can pass your test, right, so that you can know what to do if things like that happen when you're driving. Likewise, during the practical driving test, the examiner will test your general driving abilities. They will test you on emergency stop and how you navigate different road types. You would also do maneuvers, e.g. parallel parking, bay parking, pulling up on either side of the road, and you will maneuver and reversing 2 cars length, and then you will rejoin traffic. You know, they'll test you on independent driving, like following direction from a sat nav or following the traffic signs. You actually need to know how to do all of these things I just mentioned, because you don't know which maneuvers, right, your examiner would ask you to do during your practical driving test. Now, my second tip was to get enough practice as possible. You see, after passing my theory test, right, I started practicing for my practical test. I took about 32.5 hours of paid lessons, which cost me £1,300. That was £40 per hour. I also took 10 hours of unpaid lessons with my neighbor. Initially, right, I didn't want to do like driving lessons because I knew how to drive, and I used to drive in my home country, Nigeria, but my auntie actually convinced me to take driving lessons here in the UK, because driving in Nigeria is totally different from driving here in the UK. Like, I need to learn how to drive here in the UK properly to be able to pass the driving test. And yeah, I did listen to her, and if I'm being honest, taking driving lessons here in the UK was vital to me passing my test. Throughout my lessons, I gained experience driving in various weather conditions, on different road types here in the UK, and multiple levels of traffic and lighting here in the UK, because you know the weather in the UK can be quite amazing. So yes, my driving lessons taught me all of that. Now, another important thing I did when I was practicing how to drive here in the UK was that I used the car I will be using for my test, which was our car, to get used to how to drive it so that I don't get any surprises during my test. So what I did is that I used my driving instructor's car to practice with him, and then I used our own car to practice with my neighbor. Tip number 3 was that I watched a lot of YouTube tutorial on how to drive here in the UK, especially how to navigate roundabouts here in the UK, because there were many roundabouts in my test area. I even bought a driving course that cost me £39 just to gain enough knowledge to practice my driving and to get good at driving, and so that I can be a safe driver. My fourth tip would be to choose the right driving instructor and driving lessons for you. You see, selecting the right driving instructor and lesson structure can significantly influence your learning experience and your chances of passing your practical driving tests. Let me just see what happened to me. Initially, I booked a driving instructor who offered like Pass Express course, right? Which required me to pay for 25 hours of driving lessons and the test fee upfront. The instructor then scheduled my driving lessons and then booked my practical test for me. So I was supposed to take an intensive driving lessons a few days before my test date and then take my driving test immediately after that. That was how it was meant to work, right? However, that did not happen because the lessons structure was ineffective. I just decided to stop the lessons, skip the test, report the instructor to citizen advice, and then I recovered some of my money back from him. After that experience, right, I was like, okay, let me take a break, re-strategize, and book the practical driving test myself. So I did that, and as my test dates approached, right, I found another driving instructor who offered like pay-as-you-go lessons without the pressure of any intensive course or Pass Express and all of that. Unfortunately, I didn't get along well with that particular driving instructor, and after just one lesson, I decided to find someone else, and then I rescheduled my test date again. So I continued searching for a driving instructor who offered pay-as-you-go lessons because I didn't want to do any Pass Express course at this point in time. Likewise, I wanted to take my lesson at a comfortable pace, like once a week, so that it will fit into my schedule, right? Eventually, I found another driving instructor who had great reviews. The guy was calm. He had like a patient style of teaching. At a point in time, his style of teaching did not want to like match my style of learning, but my neighbor filled in that gap and it was fine, you know. He didn't just focus on helping me to pass. He taught me how to be like confidence behind the wheel and how to be a safe driver, which is very important when it comes to passing your practical test. So do not hesitate to switch driving instructors if you feel that something is not right or the instructor is not a right fit for you. Trust your instinct. By the way, you're paying for their service, right, to achieve a particular goal of being a safe driver here in the UK and to learn how to drive in the UK and to pass your practical driving test. So if their style is not working for you, just tell them their style is not working for you and move on. So my tip number 5 was to practice mock test early. After about 8 lessons with my instructor, right, I started doing full-length mock test scenarios. This included roundabout, dual carriageways, parallel parking under pressure. You know, I got used to being observed and judged without it throwing me off balance. You know, that mindset shift just made a difference on my test date, and I wasn't distracted by the examiner, because when you're doing your practical driving test, right, the examiner actually will be taking things as you drive, like maybe take what you've done, or if you did something wrong, they'll be taking notes. So those things can distract you. But because I did a couple of mock tests with my driving instructor, right, and he was doing all of those too, so I wasn't distracted with that on my test it. Likewise, the mock test helped me a lot. You know, I practiced staying calm and spotting my mistakes so I could work on them. Tip number 6 was that I learned to drive on the test route, not to game the system, but just to reduce surprises. My test route had certain tricky roundabouts, so I practiced them repeatedly with my driving instructor. That familiarity helped me calm my nerve on test days, because I know that no matter the roundabouts my examiner would take me in this my town, I will know how to navigate that roundabout. And as God would have it, right, my examiner actually took me into all the roundabouts on my test route, and I navigated them really well. And trust me, where I did my test route, there are a lot of complex roundabouts. In short, people who live in my town, right, shy away from taking their test in the test center in the town where I live, because they just feel it's too difficult because of those roundabouts. Like, we have roundabouts that are complex. You have some roundabouts that have like 5, 6, 7 exits, and they are all in the test route. Some of them are not in the test route, but majority of those complex roundabouts, right, are around the test route. So a lot of people shy away from taking their test in the test center in my town. They would prefer to go to the closest town near us to go and take their test, to show you how tricky those roundabouts can be. But I navigated them really well. So that's why I would highly suggest that when you're practicing how to drive here in the UK, you should know how to do all the maneuvers, how to navigate all the roads here in the UK, all the different kind of roads here in the UK, because you don't know which road they will take you on. Because even though I was practicing my driving on some test routes, right, there were some routes that my examiner took me to during my test that I have not been to. And trust me, I did all the routes because there's a website called Pass Me Fast where you can go and download a document that contains like test routes in a particular test center. I did that and I went through all those routes, and trust me, there were some routes he took me to that were not on that document. Now the seventh strategy was that I worked on my inner voice, because your mind then is a battlefield. Honestly, anxiety was one of my most significant barrier, not my driving skills. I had to tell myself continually that it's okay to be nervous on your test date. Just drive like you would do during your lessons. Because anytime I drive with my driving instructor, right, and my neighbor, they always tell me that I'm a very safe driver. In short, my driving instructor used to say, I used to drive as though I don't have any problem in the world, like as though I'm not rushing anyway, because I used to take my time to drive. And I kept telling myself that you're a safe driver, you got this. Now, let me share what helped me the most on test day. So the night of my test day, I ensured to get a good night's rest so that I feel refreshed in the morning. Like I always do this before any test, really. My test was at 12:35 p.m. Yep. So before my test, I ate well, I dressed well. I even washed my car before my test, like inside and outside, because I was using my own car for my test. So I cleaned my car very, very well, which made me confident. And I was sure to take my provisional driving license, and I stayed positive. I arrived at the test center 5 minutes early, but I would highly suggest that you arrive earlier. Let's just say arrive like 10-15 minutes early, because I was almost running late for my test. I'm not going to lie. I was, because I went to the car wash to wash my car. When I got to the exam center, I sat in the reception and then I waited for my examiner to come. While I was waiting, I did like stretches to just calm my nerves. And then I gave myself the prep talk. I reminded myself it's okay to make small mistakes. Just don't panic and keep driving confidently and safely. Stay calm and focus. Check your mirrors frequently. Signal in good time. Keep a safe distance from other vehicles. Observe speed limits. Don't go too slow either. Yep, I told myself all of these things. And during my test, I was actually reciting my routines as I did my maneuver. I would say mirror, signal, maneuver. Like that's what I was doing during my driving test. Also during my test, right, I did ask my examiner to repeat instructions like I think twice or 3 times when I did not like maybe hear him well or understand what he was asking me to do. At a point in my test, I missed a turn and he redirected me. When I felt like I had made a mistake while driving, I kept going and I remind myself that the errors might not have been as bad as I thought. Maybe the error I made might not have failed me, and then I didn't even really pay attention to that. But at some point when I was almost getting back to the test center after like my test, we were almost going back to the test center, right, I felt like I had failed because I did not perform the emergency stop. You see, my husband had passed his practical driving test a few months before I took mine, and he passed on the second attempt. And he told me that if you did not execute the emergency stop during your driving test, right, you had failed the test, because he said when he failed the first time, he didn't do emergency stop. And he did justify this his theory, because he explained that examiners would prefer not to see you do this maneuver, like do the emergency stop, unless necessary. That emergency stop, right, can cause harm to like a vehicle. And at that moment, his word actually made perfect sense to me. So I was worried when we were already approaching the test center after I had gone my route and we were coming back to the test center. But I told myself, keep driving safely. Don't panic. If you fail, it's fine. Just keep driving. Surprisingly, right, I passed without doing emergency stop. So be mindful of what people who are not like maybe driving instructors or examiners tell you about driving in the UK. They might not mean it for evil, but they might not just be knowledgeable either. I had 3 minor faults, but nothing serious. Now, after my test, right, when we were in the car, and then the examiner asked me, how did you think your test went? I was like, I'm not sure. I think I failed because I didn't do the emergency stop, because I know that once you are about to pass, or once they see that you're going to pass the test, you do emergency stop. The examiner was like, huh? He was like, you drove beautifully and you passed. I was like, huh, really? I was surprised and I was so happy. I was like, yeah, you don't necessarily have to do emergency stop during your driving test. I just stopped in the back and looked at my husband because he was seated at the back. I was like, your theory has been proven wrong. So with that said, if you're getting ready for your driving test, I hope this gives you a realistic, pressure-free roadmap. Please do not compare yourself with anybody. Don't compare yourself with me. What I did might work for you and it might not work for you. Go at your pace when it comes to learn how to drive here in the UK. Find what works for you, and remember that the UK driving test, like both the theory and the practical test, is all about you learning how to become a safe and confident driver, not perfect. If you find this video helpful, please like it and share it with someone else who is on the journey.